Gonna give it a couple of moments. Type in the chat an emoji that lets me know how you are feeling today. How are y'all feeling today? Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's that type of girl, huh? Yes, yes. And you bite them today. Bless you, Mike. You're hungry. I am starving. That's my emoji for how I'm feeling hungry. You can type in an emoji as you come
Hey,
in.
good
Tell us
afternoon,
how
everyone.
you
How
are
is
feeling.
everyone?
Hey, awesome.
Hello, everyone. Just trying to deal with some DC traffic, and there's a new guy in town, and we have some transition things.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We are the State and Regional Coordinating Committee, and today we've invited advocacy and governance to come visit us. It is timely, but probably a little early as well to have this conversation. But we always want to keep in the forefront. So we'll do this about 3 times a year. Is we'll invite in advocacy and governance to keep us updated on ways that we can support one another in our state and regional associations. Also to make sure that we are up to date on what's happening legislatively and how we can always be advocates for our own constituents and our states and our region. So I am Jonica, your co-chair, and our other co-chair is Katie. We're always here to answer questions. We have a couple of housekeeping at the end, so you can always continue this conversation in exchange. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bill and Mike.
Katie, do you want to say anything?
I think Jonica covered it all, so we'll let you guys have the bulk of the time today.
Oh, poor us. Like, there's nothing transpiring here in Washington, D.C. You guys know there's nothing happening here. It's just the same old boring, 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 boring stuff. That's a joke. I hope everybody got that. Um, but first of all, I just want to thank everybody that is part of this call just to and this is really more of a topical conversation than a presentation of what's good, what's bad, or anything like that. There is a lot of things that are transpiring and things are happening from a day-to-day basis, but um you know I think more now than ever is the opportunity for state and regionals to really become engaged in some of the things that are going to be transpiring over the next month and over the next couple of years. And so with that, I'll just start um, our brief presentation and just allow you guys to understand kind of the things that we're looking at in regards to state and regionals being able to become engaged in the state as well as the federal process. Um, Mike is trying to read my mind, and he's really good at that. But and I'm not going to preach to the choir here. There's a lot of things that we talk about at the federal level, but really most of the issues are really taking part at the state level. And we're talking about financial aid, state authorization, tuition policies, waivers, transfer and articulation programs, admissions requirements. I mean, these are all bread and butter issues that we have for AACRAO. Um, and these are all your issues. And unfortunately, we don't have the like the bandwidth to be able to go onto every individual state. But, like these are all important issues that we can support all of you on. Um, next, um, you know, we've all talked about performance funding, accountability, residency, reciprocity with other states. You have state reporting issues. I mean, all these are issues that I don't have to like delve into for like these are all state reporting requirements, not even federal issues. So as Mike and I kind of like went into the higher education space and kind of like looked at these are the pressing kind of issues that are transpiring across um, all states. These are and these are 30,000 foot level kind of conversations. Um, the issue that's going to come up in the next Congress is um, tuition, rising costs. Um, there's a lot of conversation around student well-being and what that means in regards to an institution's responsibility. Um, we have a lot of faculty burnout and what that means to the continuity for an institution of higher education. We have the issue of community college attrition. We have seen increases, especially as a result of COVID, and we have all seen the increases that transpired from last year to this year as a result of like the reports that the clearinghouse has been able to put out. So, I mean, community college enrollment continues to increase, but is that at the cost of four-year institutions? Um, we have the issue of campus protests. I don't think that's an easy issue for anybody to resolve here and there. I just think that it's not an easy issue to resolve. Um, obviously, we have a political devise, and we're all trying to figure all that out. What we have seen is that there is a huge movement towards um, public and private partnerships. We've also seen an unfortunate movement towards institutions of higher education that are closing. We have seen that one institution closes per month. What will that mean to higher education? I think that is a conversation that like we all have to have, and we're all pondering in regards to like what does an institution of higher education closing a month mean? We are updating our guidance in regards to close and public institutions in regards to best practices. So that will be forthcoming. Um, and I think the next kind of talking points are um, talent crisis, tenure erosion, emerging college alternatives. I think emerging college alternatives is probably going to be front and center, especially with the new administration. Um, and I think that that will be a really like hot topic that we are going to have to deal with within higher education. Some other issues that all of higher education has to deal with, um, enrollment management, and student retention. What's the process of the higher education business practice of having 33% of students not come back after their freshman year? Um, what do students want? Obviously, there's more competition. We have an enrollment cliff. That is a serious situation. It's expected that there are going to be much fewer um, high school seniors that are going to be enrolling in college in the future, just simply because there are fewer high school seniors. Again, that kind of like piggybacks on the whole experiences kind of conversation and alternative credentials. And that's a whole embracing technology and digital transformation. Um, I think these are all issues that higher education kind of like has to face. And I actually feel awful for being like the bad, like the bad guy trying to tell all everybody of like what we're facing. Um, so we're all dealing with trying to address the whole process of how do we build increased relationships with students, decrease public funding, um, recruitment and workload, inclusion and diversity, racial inequities, and the overall value propos the overall value proposition for higher education. Um, but I think that's where we're at. It's a brave new world, and it's certainly not one that we all want to be in, but it also provides some opportunities.
I'm gonna come off mute here for a little bit. You guys can still see my screen. That didn't mess up when I stopped sharing. Okay, awesome. So Bill walked us through some of the policy issues that we're tracking here that we'd love for you guys to also join the conversation, stay attuned to. But I'm going to show us a little bit about our advocacy center and how you guys can become more engaged, how we can support you as you guys advocate on some of these issues. So on the AACRAO website, right, this is just, here's our landing page here. on the top right, there's the Advocacy and Advocacy Center. And that brings you to this fancy page here that has three main ways that it can support state and regionals engagement. So when you land on this page, you'll notice first thing, there's these Our Issues, right? Double Pell, all of that. This is kind of the first way that we can help support engagement. So if you click on a particular issue, let's say Double Pell, take action, it's going to ask you for your address, right? And it's going to use that address to look up based on that. Oh, look, my representative, it knows, is Eleanor Norton, and it provides me with a template for a letter that I can send to Eleanor on this particular topic, right? So all I would need to do is just kind of fill in the information here, and I would be able to hit send, and I would send my representative an issue already with the verbiage and everything laid out on that. One thing to note, this particular letter template, you're sending this as yourself. So this is going to show up as, for me, Mike Billfinger. We do have the ability to, their power is in the collective, right? Speaking as as the state and regional association is more powerful than you as the individual. We do have the option to support if you want to find an issue that you want to engage with and you'd like our support, to send a letter on behalf of your state and regional rather than you personally. We can support that. Please reach out to gr@acra.org to do that. This letter template that you're looking at here is only for the individual side. So just something to keep in mind. I encourage you all to still take a look and explore kind of the issues that we have up there, and sign on to letters as you feel comfortable, but just something to be aware of. You're sending that as an individual versus if you feel more comfortable speaking on behalf of your state and regional, your institution, that's something that we can also help facilitate, just not through this particular section of the website. So that's kind of option one that we can support engagement here. Option two is we can, if you have a specific bill within your piece of legislation, within your state that you want to track, we can, please, we want to know about that. We spend a lot of our time is spent on the federal level looking at federal issues. We'd love to be more involved in the state level, but there's a lot of states with a lot of issues and a lot of complexity in all those. It's just too much for our team to handle. This is where we really are hoping to rely on you guys to kind of be our agents on the ground, right? Feeding information up to us. So you'll notice here on the side, this is new. We've created a form that kind of lays out the two ways that you can let us know about information and how we can then help support that. So if you click this track issues here, takes you just to the bottom of the page, and here's this form. So let's say you had a bill in your state that you wanted to receive notifications anytime there's some kind of update, right? When it passes out of committee, when it's advancing to a floor vote, is it signed into law yet? Has it been reintroduced in the next Congress? Well, what's going on with this bill? You can let us fill out this information, and you would select bill tracking, and you can let us know. So for instance, S2379 Reverse Transfer Efficiency Act, you would give us that information, and then we can put that into the system so that it would appear, if I scroll up under bills here, I could then put that using the information that you gave me through that form. I then can put it into the back end, and you'll see it as an issue here. So ignore the fact this one a little out of date. We're going to work with me here, pretend it's more current. You can see, all right, here's the co-sponsors for that bill. Here's the most recent actions, right? Again, this one's a little out of date, so it's 2020, but you could see when was it introduced, did it get passed on committee, and we can set up those notifications to go to you as well if you have an email you'd like to receive those at. So that's kind of option two, is the bill tracking. If you have a specific piece of legislation that you want to stay up to date on, where is that at? you can fill out that form, let us know, we'll put it in, you'll get those notifications, and you'll also be able to see that progress under the bills section here in the Advocacy Center. Option 3 is we also have the ability to set up kind of a keyword search or key phrase search. So same thing, you're just going to click on the track issues here on the side. It's going to take you down to the form. Rather than clicking bill tracking though, I'm going to select keyword search and I'm going to put in whatever my keyword is there. So this, our platform, Congress Plus, it does a scrape of the Federal Register, of the state legislature websites to look for any new legislation related to this keyword. So let's say I don't have a specific S2379 reverse transfer efficiency. I don't know the specific one, but I want to know anytime a new piece of legislation related to student privacy gets introduced in my state, I would like to be made aware of that piece of legislation. You would say, okay, let's say my state's Kentucky. The issue I want is student privacy. And whatever email you want to receive that at. And then our platform is going to do that kind of scrape of those official websites. And if it catches anything, oh, there is a new bill with the word student privacy in it, you'll get a notification of that to your email. We'll also get those notifications, but they can be a little, again, there's 50 states and there's only Bill and I, there's only 2 of us. So it can be a little overwhelming to get all those notifications. If one comes up that you're like, ooh, I didn't know about that bill, but now that I have the specific legislation number, right, the S2379, I'd love to receive notifications on that specific one. Come back here, submit the form, but this time do bill tracking, right? Let me know about that one. So those are kind of the 3 ways, right? We have the letter writing that we can help you with. Either the individual writing that you can do through the website, or you can reach out to gr@acrao.com and we can help facilitate a letter on behalf of your state and regional association. We can set up those kind of keyword searches or key phrase searches to scrape your state website or the Federal Register for any new bills related to a topic that you guys want to stay updated on. Or you can get notifications, and you can also find those on the website for any specific legislation that you want to stay in the loop about.
Let me just jump in here, Mike.
Yeah.
That's a lot of information. That's a lot of information for a lot of our state and regionals. If I may, like, simplify things, we have the ability for state and regionals to become engaged in the federal level. We have the ability for state and regionals to become engaged on a state level. And we have the ability for all of you to reach out to your state representatives, whether it be holistically, all state representatives, or be more targeted towards your education committees on the on the Senate or the House. And so what we're here is to provide a service and for allowing everybody to become engaged in the public policy process. As Mike mentioned, there's more power from the voices coming from the states than just Mike and myself talking from the federal level. So this is literally like our information sharing of how state and regionals can become engaged. And it's not just now, but there are a lot of issues that are going to come down the pike.
We had a few more slides, but do we want to pause? Were there any questions specifically about Advocacy Center? Or do you want to save those for the end?
That's a great stop. And we'll talk a little bit more about like our engagement in the past. But I think that's a great pause point, Mike.
Okay, I have a question. So we have a legislative issues committee within my group. I'm macro from Michigan. And what if we have, like, let's say the chair of that isn't, their institution isn't an AACRAO member? And are they still able to get to it, or is it limited to just people who are AACRAO members?
I think we're open to all issues that are coming up in the state and regionals. And this is just Bill talking. But you know, I'll run through that gamut if I need to.
Sounds
There's
good.
nothing within the form that's going, like, you don't need a member sign on, or it's not
That's
going
what
to
I'm
check.
wondering. Yeah.
You can, it's open, anyone can submit something to the form.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Engagement's always a positive thing from my perspective.
Yep, me too.
Even though you're from Michigan and I'm from Wisconsin, so that's all right.
We love and
W. Mike, there was a question that was brought up on the chat.
I see Jonica has dropped just some to the general group about does anyone else have an advocacy role on their state and regional association? And that is, you're kind of teasing out one of the things that we are gonna talk about next. So that might be a nice segue to kind of, if there's no further we are gonna have time at the end for questions, but if there's no further questions here, I think that might be a great segue to hop back in, Bill, and start talking about the developing the government liaison, the board liaison for state and regionals.
Sure.
All right.
You want to pop up the presentation?
Yep. Give me a moment.
There's nothing going on today, by the way. It's only President-elect Trump coming in, talking to the Republican caucus, and then talking to, the Senate. There's a new majority leader and then, he's going to the White House. Nothing going on in Washington today. It's a peaceful transition of power.
I think we can skip this one's kind of the
Yeah. So, I mean, to reiterate, it allows for state and regionals to become engaged in federal state levels. We need your help to identify which bills. I would always encourage everyone to touch base with their government relation individuals. That's so key. That's so key. If you're going to become engaged and you want to express what this will mean for an admissions office or registrar office regarding any legislative bills, so key. That way you guys are both on the same page and you have a stronger advocacy platform. And one of the things that we would love to do is to be able to create government relations individuals at all our state and regionals, so that way we can have like just debriefs of what's transpiring at a state and regional level. Next. As an example, I just wanted to like share something that this is not something new. When, and I'm going to talk 4 or 5 years ago, but when the Prosper Act came out, and that was Congresswoman Fox's legislation in regards to like updating the HEA. We completely engaged our state and regionals, and we had 10 state and regionals completely engaged. And just to put it in perspective, they were able to like spread the word for 276 members of Congress, more than half, and on the House side, and that's critical. That's engagement. That's engagement. And we're probably going to have to need to engage state and regionals as we move forward with any prospectus legislation as we move forward with the new Congress. And this is just a list of the state and regionals. There's been a lot of not a lot of conversations, but there's been some questions in regards to the ability of state and regionals to become involved in the public policy process. And the bottom line is that, you know, state and regionals are not prohibited from engaging in lobbying or public policy advocacy activities merely because of their tax exempt status. You know, and it all comes down to, and you can move it forward, Mike. Um, all you guys are not paid. You're all volunteers. So all of your advocacy work falls under a volunteer process, and and you don't have to, you know, you don't receive more than $1,500 per week. I mean, per year for being part of this association. So I just, I'll leave it at that. There's been questions raised in the past about that, and I just wanted to make sure individuals had that information.
And
I
that's kind
think
of
to you,
all.
Chairwoman.
That's all we had. Yeah. Any questions? Otherwise,
Yes. You can use the issues tracking for state legislation. Absolutely. That's the whole premise of it all. We would encourage all of you to identify any state issues and bring them to our attention, and then we could put a marker in the system, and then any state legislation that would come up or any action around that state legislation would immediately be highlighted directly to you as well as ourselves.
I'll point out it's not a question, but in case anyone is intimidated or overwhelmed by the thought of starting this process, there is the Federal Legislative Process and Advocacy 101 course. I'll drop the link in the chat, but that's free for AACRAO members if you want to start there.
Katie, I never thought I'd be overwhelming.
oof, I don't. Do you also not want to sleep at night? Do you really want me to answer that one, Jonica?
What
I
was that
just think
question, Mike?
sometimes at the federal level, um, some people can get bogged down in the state and not see what's happening at a federal level. And even when we do, many things have kind of been masked because of all of the conversation about the election. So we could have missed some things. So I'm wondering, with you all doing this on a daily basis, specifically looking at supporting and advocating for ACRA, right, and the work that we do from the admissions, enrollment, space, like, what is Melanie and the board saying, hey, we need to keep an eye on? So maybe we can look and see more specifically what we could even be tracking or should be tracking at the state level, because there may be a state policy.
Do you have another hour? Like, seriously, do you have another
Brief
hour?
footnote. Brief footnote.
We're actually, funny that you mentioned that. We're actually having a podcast that's going to be delivered right after Thanksgiving on some of the things that we have learned in regards to the federal election and the focus of the new administration. We also have a webinar that's transpiring on December 18th that we will talk about some of the issues that we have seen are going to, again, it's just piggybacking on the podcast. But if you want a precursor, there's lots. There's lots. There's short term, which is a lame duck. And so there's a lot of veteran packages that are transpiring that are moving forward that have to do with 8515, possibly some reporting requirements that they're looking to incorporate for veterans. Some of the issues that we're already hearing about, obviously, a travel ban. We're talking about what the Department of Education will focus on, OCR. What will that mean? There's Title IX regulations. There's congressional appointees that they're going to fast track. There's concern, I mean, obviously, financial aid regulations or processes are going to be delayed, if not liquidated. We also have talks about program participation agreements and the fact that they will incorporate anti-DEI language in order for institutions to receive Title IV. There's accreditation issues. They're looking to kick back accreditation to the states and get rid of the regional accreditation process. There's also reconciliation packages that are being discussed in order to pay for the new tax cuts that are going to go into effect the first thing when they get in Congress, how they're going to pay for them. All fun things.
I'm not involved in the high level discussions that Bill is with Melanie, but I think the one that, not being a registrar, but that kind of freaks me out, that keeps me up at night. There's been talks of we don't necessarily know the specifics what's going to look like, but of turning accreditation back over to the states, empowering states to be have a much larger role. And I can't help but kind of, my mind goes on all of the, well, what if this, and the infinite number of implications that might have and impacts on institutions. I mean, an institution in Kentucky versus an institution in Minnesota are going to have wildly different standards for potentially the same course, this with the same, in theory, the same goals for the student, the learning outcomes afterwards, but wildly different. That is, I think that's, if I had to pick one, for me, the one that I think would have potentially the most scary impacts that kind of worry me. But like I said, I'm not involved in the conversations that Bill is, and I don't know what the specifics of that one are going to be. It could not come to fruition, but that's something I've heard rumbles about that kind of keeps me up. And Jonica, I know you had some housekeeping items. I want to make sure we get to those. So you give me the word and I can put up that slide.
Yeah, we can go ahead to that. If no one else has questions, because things are forthcoming, we just want to make sure that you are in conversation at all times, like this is staying at the forefront, and that you know you have resources available. I think that's what's most important. Sometimes we get most overwhelmed when we feel like, where do I go? Where do I get this information and who can I speak to? We have a number of people here inside of the exchange. There are some other associations that do have board liaisons. No one is expecting anybody to know everything because things are constantly evolving. But when in community with one another, we are able to learn a lot smarter and a lot faster when we are able to do it together. And so Katie and I just had a few housekeeping updates. Thank you all for voting. We've had a lot of new things coming up during our voting season recently and our award season as well. So super excited to see. Hope someone submitted some best of best for our awards. And we hope that you also submitted for the new SNR Leadership Award. So can't wait to hear some updates as they roll out for our annual meeting, which will be in Seattle. So we hope you all can join us if we are doing a pre-conference. Again, exchange is so important. And the one thing Katie and I really want to push at this time, along with the committee, is roster. So if you have a state and regional, please update your rosters. We are sending out a lot of information as well. Melanie, our executive director, along with Tiffany Shu, and our vice president for state and regional, they are meeting with all of the state and regional organizations to talk to us about the annual contract, which is the affiliate contract, to make sure that AACRAO is delivering the best services possible. So please update as much as possible your rosters to make sure that this year's roster is noted for who your leaders are, as well as your website, because we want to make sure that our websites look good. We're really trying to do a huge boost at our next conference in Seattle, so that new members, if they come in, they can start funneling to these state and regionals, because we know how important state and regionals are, and we want to make sure people know about you, and AACRAO wants to make sure that people know about you. So those rosters are so very important, and our website has a lot of information. So stay active and engage with us in exchange, update those rosters, and stay in community with one another as we move through evolutionary changes, specifically as they impact our higher education institutions. And Bill shared some always good information, but the one college closes per month, along with the accreditation, it's just constant news that our industry is hearing. But if you hear things, please do share that. If you see an article that sparks some of the work that we do within our states and our regional, please share that so that we can stay up to date and progress as possible. If you see a bill, you want to track it, that only helps us know more information, because some things can go under the radar, and it's very important that we all again stick together. Katie, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Hey, I just want to say thank you for everybody to be part of this. And we just want to be a resource to all of you. And we want to be more engaged with all of you. I think state and regionals are going to be a crucial part of advocacy in the next administration. And so we really look forward to working with all of you.
That's perfect. We did miss a question in the chat that's just people are wanting a PDF of this presentation if possible.
Belm and I kind of did a little sidebar, and I think we are going to be able to make the PDF version of the presentation as well as the recording of this available on the registration page after this is concluded. And
Perfect.
also, shameless plug for myself, in the next edition of Connect, I'll be writing an article about our state and regional advocacy efforts, and there's also going to be a link to the recording, this recording and that one, as well as the form I showed you guys. So you'll also hopefully see that highlighted in next week's edition.
In regards to the question, are there any issues that keep me up at night? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. There's not one issue. I think accreditation is a big one. I think the inclusion of CCRA as a offset for the tax cuts that nobody's really focusing on, and reconciliation probably is the biggest concern for me, because that will make institutions responsible for loans that students don't pay back.
I feel like you're dropping the biggest one at the end here. My goodness.
I mean, can I just say that again? Institutions would now be responsible for paying loans that institutions do not pay back. Um,
We'll all figure it out together.
I had
yeah,
a
no,
question as you drop this
that's, if
ball.
that's a question that came up, that probably, and it will all change, and we will all become super engaged in that whole process. And that's where state and regionals will really need to be part of that discussion. Even if there's discussion about that, because again, they have to figure out, reconciliation means that they have to figure out how they're going to offset the expenditures of the tax cuts. And if that's the first thing that's going to come up in the first Congress, then they have to figure out how they're going to pay for them. $180 billion over 10 years is an easy hanging fruit. And we're going to have to become engaged in that process.
I just had a quick question before we end. Was that share? Is that anywhere that we can use language to comprehend? Because I hear it, I get it, and I feel it, but I'm like, where are the arguments that could help me understand the potential implications and where this could go forward? Is there any of that?
It's not something that's in transcript. I'm trying to think where would be a good place to point. So the CCRA,
yeah, it's CCRA and the scoring, Mike. And it's total backroom dealing stuff. How are they going to pay for the tax cuts?
CCRA stands for the College Cost Reduction Act.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. The Congressional Business Office estimates that over 10 years through that risk sharing agreement Bill mentioned, it'll generate 180 billion. So that's why he's talking about potentially using it to help offset some of the costs that are going to the losses that are expected as a result of the Trump tax cuts. So they're using a process through reconciliation. If they pass the CCRA, it would require only 50 plus 1 to pass rather than 60, and there would be no possibility of a filibuster. I don't know where we've written any. I don't know that there's a place I can point you to. This is very much, like he said, backroom dealings, but research the College Cost Reduction Act. That is the piece of legislation we're talking about here.
Thank you both. We can go ahead and end here. I appreciate you for sharing this information. I hope this was beneficial to our attendees. We also appreciate you. Don't forget about those rosters and joining us online to keep this dialogue and conversation going. Have a wonderful day.